Dear Matthew, thank you so much to be here with me, taking the time to talk and share some of your experience with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Matthew, during our introductory talk, you told me about how your Masonic journey started. And it was an easy or quick start. Can you share with our audience how did you discover about Freemasonry and about how your Masonic journey started?
But first, I like to say to all the viewers, anybody that's listening, if you want to become a Freemason, just ask them. You can ask any Mason. You can go to the lodge if you see the square and compass, go knock on the door, say you want to join. And if nobody answers the door, put a piece of paper through the letter slot with your name and contact information and say you want to join. Because then they'll contact you. They're nice people. And somehow the Freemasons have gotten this reputation of being this exclusive club that you can't get into unless blah, blah, blah. But, sure, it's an exclusive club, but it's one that's easy to join and one where you will be welcome. And so don't worry if you want to become a Freemason, just ask and you can become a Freemason. I mention this because myself, I was told when I was young, I can't remember by who, but I was told that if you want to be a Freemason, you have to wait, and they must ask you. You aren't allowed to ask to join, or you're disqualified. And this information was wrong, but I didn't know it. And it was until maybe I was 40 years old before, in conversation with a Freemason, I asked, "Is this true?" And he said, "No, it's not true. You have to ask. We can't ask you." And so I thought, "Oh, well, okay, then I'm asking." So 6 months later, I was a Freemason. But so I just put that story out to you to encourage you that if you want to be a Freemason, you can join. Just ask.
Matthew, while your Masonic journey might have taken long or longer than many other Masons, in your personal journey, that brought you to learn, to explore, and to seek a very Masonic fundamental. This via other philosophies, and I'm referring to the Know Thyself. Can you share with our audience about your research and learnings on Hermeticism, Western mystery traditions, Kabbalah, and alchemy?
It was different for me than for most Masons, I think. Most Masons, or many Masons, don't start the study of philosophy or symbolism, this type of thing, until they've been a Mason many years. Maybe they never started, and that's okay. Many Freemasons have no knowledge of Kabbalah or Rosicrucian or Neoplatonism or anything like this. And it's okay. Freemasonry is big. There's room for everybody. And you don't have to study the esoteric science. But for me, that was my joy. I came at it from the other end. My introduction was through the esoteric studies. When I was about 13, I found in my father's library the teachings of the Golden Dawn system of magic by Israel Regardie. And this book is the ritual book for a group called the Golden Dawn, which was a ceremonial magic, philosophical, hermetic group that was formed in Britain, in the UK, at the turn of the last century. 1890s to 1905 was its heyday. And it was a big organization, and study of magic and ritual. And this organization was founded by Wynne Westcott. And Wynne Westcott was I believe, the first master of the Ars Coronati Lodge. And he was master of Ars Coronati 3 times and was knowledgeable about esoteric, about alchemy, and Woodman also was there. And they formed this Golden Dawn organization, which my father had the book of because he was a scholar of W.B. Yeats. and W.B. Yeats was very prominent in this organization. So this was my first introduction to Freemasonry, was realizing that that they had written this book and that they had formed this organization. So I thought, wow, Freemasonry, it's right at the core. And so that was my introduction to Freemasonry. And so my Plutarch says that the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but rather it's a fire to be lit. And my father, as I said, was professor, and he taught me how to learn. And he told me, you don't have to learn all this stuff people want to teach you in school. What you have to do is you have to know how to find out information that you're interested in. But if you know how to learn, then when you find something you're interested in, you can learn it. And so this was good advice for me. We all get a lot of opportunities for learning. Every day we're offered some opportunity to learn something. And I took advantage of the ability to learn, to study what I was interested in. And this was the esoteric science, things that were less known. So when I met an alchemist, I studied alchemy. When I met a Kabbalist, I studied Kabbalah, and so on, for a lot of different systems, because you meet many things in your life, and I'm getting old. So I studied firewalking, hypnosis, druidry, Gnosticism, martial arts, Hermetic science, whatever I ran into, and I spent time with that. But really, it's just that I got into the habit of enjoying learning. And once you're in the habit of enjoying learning, you can learn wherever you are.
Matthew is brilliant. And now that you have gone through all these philosophies, did you find a red line, a common theme that actually go through all of them? Is the point within the circle what actually connect them, or it doesn't?
So there is a common thread that runs between these various disciplines, probably more than one. But one that I would point out is what you mentioned earlier about the knowledge of the self. And even more than knowledge of the self, I would say the perfection of the self, and even the conquest of the self. The Masonic allegory that's most commonly used is the building of Solomon's temple, the rebuilding of the temple.
Right.
And in that rebuilding, of course, the most important part of the temple is the Holy of Holies. This is the room where the God is supposed to come and live, his house, and it's very sacred. So the temple foundation must be strong, but really it's all about that sacred place. And I'm a Gnostic, so I believe in direct communication, even with union with the divine, everybody, personally. And the idea is to create, for me, my understanding of this Masonic temple building, is that one must create in oneself the perfect environment for that divine spark, so that it wants to live there. To paraphrase Aleister Crowley a little bit, he says that the only point of all the magic, the meditation, the ritual, the drumming, the whatever it is that you do, the yogas and the disciplines, all is only for one purpose. And this is to obtain the knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel. And the HGA, as he calls it. And this knowledge and conversation is his way of describing the moment when that connection is made, when you start to receive the direct guidance. And after that, You know what to do because you're getting the guidance. But until that, you try everything, until you find some system that allows you to make contact with the higher self.
Interesting. Thank you, Matthew. The Holy of Holy, that room accessible only to God and to the high priest, and only once or twice per year. It's a very intimate place where only the true and the pure can get there.
Sure.
Perfection, I understand it, but you trigger me on the choice of the word conquest. Why did you choose that word, Matthew?
The self is temporary. It's not permanent. We all will go. And so, how will you go? Who will go? The idea is in Kabbalism that there is a veil between the manifest world, the lower seven Sephirah, and the unity, the Trinity, the higher triad. And that veil is the veil between the manifest and the unmanifest, between the corporal and the ethereal, between the world of man and the realms of the gods. And in between, they have the abyss. And you spend everything to rise to the level of the abyss, the highest perfection of the self. But you can't take the self across the abyss. So in the end, you must give up the self to get across the abyss, to attain to the higher Sephiroth. And so when I say conquest of the self, yes. Perfection of the self, yes. And in the end, sacrifice of the self. The self must be given up. The self can't make it across the test, across to the next plane. And so here you are to give it. There's an old story I read from Latin school when I was a kid, but there was this famous Roman who they thought that the gods were angry with them, and a chasm opened. There was an earthquake, and a chasm, a cliff opened, and they were all worried. What will they do that will allow Rome to survive? And one of their warriors, one of the leaders, rode his horse forward and rode it into the cliff and said that this was the sacrifice the gods required. And according to the story, the cliff closed and Rome survived. But this theory of sacrifice, is very pervasive in our society. The idea that you will go beyond death for your spiritual vision. And we all must go. So it's just a question of how you will choose to go. And so to me, the conquest of the self says, yes, you will do absolutely everything to make yourself perfect. But in the end, you must give it all up for whatever purpose or reason you choose to get to the next plane.
One of the elements that actually I didn't mention, and we discussed shortly, Matthew, was the tarots, that you studied tarots as well. Are tarots the equivalent in Freemasonry of the tracing board?
The tracing board of life. Because all of the tarot are archetypes, allegories for ways of being. So if life is a progression of states of consciousness, you could say, then sure, the tarot is the tracing board of states of consciousness. But tarot is also from the Kabbalah, Many people don't realize this. Tarot is very popular these days, and most people never heard of Kabbalah. But when you have the tree of life of the Kabbalah, which is the basic diagram of that system, You have the 10 Sephiroth, or the 10 spheres on the tree. The major arcana of the tarot are the paths that run between those Sephiroth. And so they are the relationship between the states of consciousness on the tree of life.
These philosophies provide support for a deep and intimate inner search, require time, commitment, actually courage, using, leveraging from the choice of the word conquest as well, to bring them to a conclusion if a conclusion can be found. However, we live in a generation where social media are becoming the mentors for the younger generations, where digital references about very deep philosophies like the one you have studied need to fit in a 30 seconds video so that they can be popular and then shared and so forth. Can you give me your point of view about how these philosophies, as deep as they are, can actually survive or be understood by a generation where swiping goes faster than even taking the time to look into a book shelf?
Is if we come back to the knowledge of the self, and we say that the goal is to catch a few rays of the light that comes from beyond, to allow some small fragment of God or light or the divine to appear so that we can know ourselves. Does social media help? Does digital help? I would say it's half and half. It half helps. Social media and the internet, the digitization, is brilliant for learning. The age of Aquarius is upon us, and all the information is now available to mankind. Anything you want to know, you can learn it. It's all there. Now, maybe there's more than one opinion. You have to separate the wheat from the chaff. That's part of everything being available. But everything is available. And you can learn and learn and learn. But in learning, you still can't get above the abyss. And where will you find on the internet about yourself? What is the website you go to find out about Antonio Russo?
Yeah.
Well, there isn't one, right? Because to find yourself, the wisdom lives down below those 30-second sound bites that we've become so fond of. It isn't out there. It's inside. And even when you read something and all of a sudden you go, oh, I know. There's that moment of, oh, that comes from inside. It doesn't come from outside. All the information can sit out there all around, but when you fire the synapse, when you make the idea, all that chatter of facts and digital opinions, it's just monkey mind. It's silence before the real work must begin. And if you want to know yourself, how are you going to do that without looking inside? Then you're going to realize how big the space is inside. And then you can actually start the work. So half yes, you can learn so fast, but the wisdom doesn't go across the abyss. And in order to actually know this self and to achieve any form of enlightenment, you're going to have to go inside into the quiet, away from the monkey mind, away from the social media, into that point of silence. Because only if you find the point of silence are you going to be able to hear that faint voice speaking from the mercy seat. While your mind is so busy talking, thinking, you can't hear it. So you're going to have to find the silence, and I think that's not on social media.
Cacophony, the noise, the constant being solicited by social media, rumors, etc., like you said, and then you need to find the holy of holies, where you have that silence, the moment where you confront yourself or you try to hear yourself, and then uh, in your experience talking to Masons in North America and meeting with them either physically or via Zoom, uh, do you have a perception, or do you have the feeling that the type of question or the necessity to find that intimate chamber is actually fading, and people give up that quest because it's so demanding, because you need to give up social media, your exposure, and the answer is not that simple.
Everybody has their own vision. Everybody has their own journey. And I can't say how anyone else will find the truth. When I say even that the goal is to achieve the knowledge and conversation of your angel, uh, that's just mine, you know. Maybe some other people too, but maybe somebody else has some completely different vision of the way that they will. Doesn't matter your method, it doesn't matter the religion to me. It doesn't matter your choice of drum song or your method of meditation or whatever. What matters is that you do it. And even there, I find Masonry is very forgiving. There's some people that have hard attitude, but mostly everybody supports you in finding your own way. And your way is different than other people's way. Masons will always tell you you must do your duty, and they're adamant about this. But they will never tell you what your duty is. That's between you and God, right? It's up to you to find your own way, and they will support you in finding your own way. But it's different for everybody. So if some people think the way is through drinking beer, well, maybe Bacchus will agree with them. Oh, he's wine.
Probably did, but it was wine, right?
That's wine, right? But you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And maybe somewhere there's a way to find enlightenment through social media and digital. It's possible, but I didn't find it there. So
Yeah.
for me, it says that's only half. Half is out, but half is in. It's like the macrocosm and the microcosm, the emerald tablet,
Yeah.
there is the eternally great and the eternally small. And one is not better than the other, but both are part of life, the macrocosm and the microcosm.
Matthew, we go into a quick question session at the moment. We switch to a lighter part of the conversation. Uh, we looked into your work and your philosophy, the way that you have learned and created the knowledge that you have today. So, who's Matthew today? Uh, but what does Matthew read? What is your latest book that you're looking at, and why have you chosen that book?
My most recent favorite book is Divided Consciousness by Ernst Hilgard. Um, he's a famous psychologist, and he's writing about the various controls, divided controls of consciousness, and thinks that maybe different parts of our life have different people making the decisions. And it's beyond just the fact that we make our spaghetti the way Aunt Martha made it, or chop wood the way Uncle Fred told us to, and those conditions are still inside us, and we're still following those rules, even though those people are long past. Sure, this is one part of it, but also even just inside the self, the idea of dissociation, and that there are different parts of the self that govern different aspects. I was told as a child that most humans only use 3 or maybe 5% of their brain.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help stop thinking to myself, well, why doesn't anybody seem upset about that? Everybody just goes, oh, yeah, that's the way it is. So I spent much of my life trying to figure out what's in the other 95%. and how to use it. Is the finding of the self an impossible chimera for the current and future generations? Because we go so fast. I think we can say that the finding of the truth is near impossible, but that the searching for the truth is mandatory, omnipresent. It can be done in every environment. Sure, for the hermit on the hill who lives alone, it's easier to keep your focus on your uh, divine thought. Maybe it's harder when the wife is shouting that Katie can't find her socks and you were supposed to do the laundry or some other household thing. But that doesn't mean you can't do it because of these distractions. You must do it through the distractions. You must find the way to find the peace within, because it's easy for the hermit, but this isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be a trial. It's like the quest for the grail, you know. The quest for your truth self is similar to this quest for the grail. And I would say everyone watching this interview is involved in this quest, because if they didn't want to know more about the self, why would they be listening to this interview?
As an author, you're not someone after your current book, certainly not stopping in trying to share more of your knowledge. Are you already working on a new book?
Yes, yes.
I think the people came to this interview to know about this one. Go for it.
Well, my next book is on hypnosis.
Ah,
I've studied hypnosis for many years, and currently I'm writing a manual for the hypnotherapist, how to help people through the science of hypnosis. And so this is my current study, and that will be the next book. It's very difficult to write, much more difficult than The Point Within the Circle, which was broad concepts. But when you start to talk about details of consciousness, consciousness itself is such a nebulous subject that when you start to talk about nuances and subtleties, which is inside the mind, it's difficult to write. That's why I'm fond of Hildegard. Hildegard she's so good. He's very difficult for me to read because he's a great psychologist. And every paragraph he refers to some other psychologist that I haven't read, some book I haven't read, some theory that I didn't know about. So I have to constantly stop and go, oh, what's he talking about, and research. But it's good. It's good. That's the next one I'm working on. There's several others in the line. Sometimes I switch around from work on this one to work on that one.
Matthew. So we know about what you read. We know what you're reading, what you're writing. Who does inspire Matthew today?
Anyone that has the courage to stand up and speak their truth, stand up for the freedom of the individual to make his own choices. Anyone willing to fight tyranny and oppression. Oppression comes in many forms. Maybe it's political, maybe it's religious or economic or moral or social. But it inspires me when people will speak their truth even when they disagree with the common view, and inspires me also when people have the tolerance to allow other people to speak their view, because we don't all agree, and everyone's truth is maybe a little bit different. And by being tolerant and listening, we get a chance to grow. Sure, it's easy to be full of yourself and what you think. That's the easy part. But can you grow by allowing in new information? So I like to thank you for letting me come here and speak my own, and give a chance to say how I see the world, which I understand is maybe different than some other people.
So motive me, brother. Beautiful, beautiful statement. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Matthew. Unfortunately, the time that we have at our disposal for this conversation is ending, and allow me to thank you from the bottom of my heart to having taken the time, share your thoughts so openly. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure that the people that will be looking this will be agree with me. Um, I look forward for your next opportunity for us to meet, discuss about your work, and maybe talk more about the Holy of Holies and everything that is in there. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you very much, Antonio. It was a pleasure to speak to you.